This is part 2 for lesson 8.4 on radian measure. Okay, continuing on with number 11, and this is going to be a little bit more review tied in here, but if theta is the angle and P is on the terminal side of theta, R is the radius, find P. That's kind of a lot to digest, so let's take it a piece at a time. Theta is going to be 30 degrees. So first of all, draw the terminal side of an angle that's 30 degrees. Okay. The radius is going to be 4. That means that from the origin to this point, that's going to be 4. Also, it means that our hypotenuse of our right triangle is going to be 4. And this will be our reference angle, which is 30. So really what I'm talking about is I'm talking about this triangle, 30 degrees. This is 4. Now let's remember what we've learned before. If we've got a 90-degree angle, a 30-degree angle, then this has to be a 60-degree angle. So that creates a whole other set of, developments, because now I know a lot more about it. Because in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, remember the shorter side is going to be half the hypotenuse. And the longer side will be the shorter side times square root 3. So all of a sudden I've got that pretty easy. And I know that this point right here, that ordered pair, is going to be 2 square root 3, comma 2. So that's P. And so just understanding what we've learned before and how we can apply that into the problem gets us way ahead of where we would be if we were just trying to figure all of that out. Okay, for the next problem, we're going to talk about a unit circle. So a unit circle has a radius of 1 unit. So we don't know if it's 1 foot or 1 inch or whatever. It doesn't really matter because we're going to talk about a circle that has a radius of 1 unit. Now, whenever we're talking about situations like this, we're going to talk about being in the first quadrant unless we know something different. So I'm going to just take this. This is going to be my angle theta. I don't know what it is. This is going to be 1. And we're going to find P. It's on a unit circle. And theta is going to be negative pi 6. Okay, so negative pi 6, that tells me that we're going to go a little bit different here. Negative is going to be that way. Okay, so this is 1. And pi 6, remember we learned in the last set of questions that that's going to be negative 30 degrees. So this reference angle is 30 degrees. So what I'm talking about is I'm talking about this triangle, 30 degrees. So that would make this 60 degrees. This is 1, so find the rest. So this is going to be 1/2 because it's half of the hypotenuse. This one's going to be 1/2 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 3 over 2. And that's how you'll write it. So as far as finding P, my x-coordinate is going to be right, so positive square root 3 over 2, but then it's going to go down 1/2, so I'm going to have negative 1/2. So because of what quadrant it's in, it's going to affect our sign. When you're being asked questions like this, make sure you pay attention to what quadrant it's in, because if it's supposed to be negative 1/2 and you put positive 1/2, obviously that's going to be different, and so that will cause you to miss a problem on a quiz or a test. So pay attention. You need to sketch it out on paper. Make sure you know which quadrant you're in. Okay, for the next one, point P is located at the intersection of the unit circle, so that tells me my radius is 1, and the terminal side of angle theta in standard position. Sketch P. Find the exact coordinates, that means no decimals, of P. Simplify any radicals. So that does say to simplify our radicals. Okay, so if we're going to have theta is pi thirds. So first of all, what is pi thirds? It's pi split into thirds. So 180 degrees split into thirds, that's going to be 60 degrees. Whoops, 60 degrees. So 60 degrees right there. This is P. This is 1 because it's a unit circle. So I'm looking at this triangle right here. So it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So because it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle, my shorter leg, which is x, is going to be 1/2. And then my longer leg is going to be 1/2 times square root of 3. So square root of 3 over 2. So when I go to write P, everything's in the first quadrant, so it's going to be positive 1/2, positive square root of 3 over 2. And so that would be the exact coordinates of P. For number 14, it says 5 pi over 4. So the first thing I need to do is figure out where that is. So I'm going to draw an xy axis. Now 4 pi over 4 would be 1 pi. So it's going to be past 180, and it's going to be another fourth. So it's going to be that much right there. Another thing you could do is you could say 5 pi over 4. If I'm going to convert that to degrees, I would do 180 over pi. And that way the pi's cancel out. 4 goes into 180 45 times. And so 5 times 45, and so you can figure out how many degrees that is. The really important thing, though, is that you understand what your reference angle is. And so your reference angle here is going to be 45 degrees, because that's the difference between the terminal side and the x-axis. So this is the triangle I'm looking at. And so it's a 45, 45, 90 degree angle. It's a unit circle. And so because it's a unit circle and it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle, I do know that I'm going to take the hypotenuse and divide it by square root 2, because if I knew the shorter side, or the leg, I would multiply by square root 2 to get the hypotenuse, so I go backwards. Now to simplify that radical, I'm going to multiply by 1, so I'm going to have square root 2, and then square root 2 times square root 2 is just 2. So this is going to be square root 2 over 2 and square root 2 over 2. Now remember what I just said about knowing what quadrant you're in? In this quadrant, we're in quadrant 3, your x is going to be negative and your y is going to be negative. So when you write p, you're going to have to write negative square root 2 over 2 and negative square root 2 over 2. So just make sure you know the quadrant. Remember that your reference angle is the important angle there. You're always going to have this 90 degree angle. This whole trigonometry is based on right triangle trigonometry. That's the kind of trig we're doing in this class. There are other kinds of trigonometry that branch off and go into non-right triangles, but what we are dealing with here will be right triangles, so you need to have a right triangle. Okay, last 2 questions, so this would be a good place to pause and make sure that you understand. Try these problems without help, and then come back in and make sure you got it. Okay, for 3 pi fourths being my theta, that's the same as 135 degrees, which means that from here to here is 135 degrees. But remember, like I've said before, this is the angle we care about. So that's my reference angle, and that's 45 degrees. I draw this line down here to make a 90 degree angle so that I have a right triangle to deal with. It's a 45, 45, 90. It says it's a circle with a radius of 4, so that means this is 4 right there. And so I need to find x and I need to find y, because when it says write the exact coordinates of p, we're talking about this ordered pair right there, and so I need the x and the y. So I'm going to take my hypotenuse and divide by square root 2. And when I do that, I'm going to simplify. And so it's going to be 4 square root 2 over 2. The 2 and the 4 can cancel, so I'm going to have 2 square root 2. So that's what x is equal to, 2 square root 2, and that's what y is equal to, 2 square root 2. But remember what quadrant you're in. It's going to be a negative x and then up, so you're going to have negative 2 square root 2 and then positive 2 square root 2, because you're going left, which is negative, and then up, which is positive. And then for the last one, for 2 pi thirds, remember that pi is half of the circle, so I want 2/3 of the circle. So 180 degrees, a third of it is 60 degrees, so 60 is a third, and then 120 would be 2/3. So that's where I'm at. So 120 degrees, which makes this 60 degrees, because that's what it would take to be 180. So the triangle I'm looking at is this one. My radius is 8, and it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So I'm going to take half of 8, and that will be 4, my shorter leg, opposite the 30 degree angle. And then 4 times the square root 3 will be my longer leg. Again, because of the quadrant that I'm in, I am going to look at my signs, and it's going to be a negative 4 and then positive 4 square root 3. So when I write p, it's going to be negative 4 and then 4 square root 3. Okay, just historically speaking, these types of problems are the ones that challenge students the most as far as the first set of lessons that we've had in Unit 4. And so you want to make sure that you're clear on that and how to do those types of problems, because those seem to be the most challenging year after year, just trying to keep everything straight. So remember, you have to know your 45, 45, 90 triangle, your 30, 60, 90 triangle. You have to understand how to change degrees to radians, and you need to understand about reference angles. You have to understand that this is the angle we're talking about, the angle that it makes with the x-axis. That's the one that you're going to use. So do enough problems to practice to feel very comfortable with it before you do your quiz, and then obviously before you do your test you want to get enough practice. If you need help, come and ask, and I'll go over more problems with you. Okay, and that takes us through the end of Lesson 8-4.